Welcome to this webinar about how your staff for an organization is supposed to deliver application management services on your Microsoft Dynamics platform. You would find this webinar interesting if you're either creating, managing, or evaluating such organizations. We'll cover topics like what kind of competences do you need in your team, how do you ensure the right scalability, what the costs and risks of the various engagement models you can choose from, and I'll also at the end give you a few pointers at least on some of the stuff that we have done here in AlfaPeople to solve these conundrums. My name is Carsten Krag and I'm responsible for AlfaPeople's application management services in Europe. I have a technical background, but I have spent the last decade or so creating and operating application management organizations. And why is application management so important? Well, to address that topic, we need to step again back and see what kind of pillars is an application like Microsoft Dynamics actually building on. Well, it stands on two basic principles, but really. It stands on your business and it stands on IT, right? So it's the merger between those two things. And I don't think we have seen an era like the ones we have at the current moment where these two pillars have been more dynamic. Organizations change all the time. You buy new companies, you add new personnel, you change your processes, you change your organization, you change your products. You change, or the companies and organizations change all the time. Even more so, IT changes at the moment. Right? The evolution is going ever fast. We have never seen so many new technology steps being taken in such a rapid pace. So why would you create and intersect between those two very dynamic pillars as a static intersect? Doesn't work. We need to move away from the era where we have spent 80% of our budget building an application and only 20% of the budget for the next 5 years trying to operate it. We need to go away from that and go into an era where we actually spend much less on the initial implementation and much more for the next, throughout the entire life cycle of the solution, right? So that also means if we need to change these things, we also need to change how we think about application management services. We need to move away from it has been a cost driver only, and the basic principle has been try to operationalize this with the lowest cost possible. We need to move away from that and into an era where we actually see application management services as a value generating stream. And if we want to move into that stream, we also need to change the way we staff for our application management services organizations. So that's why this webinar is important. But let's look at the first topic, which is what the competences you need in your team. Well, I'm going to address both the width and the depth. But let's take the width first. And by looking at the width, let's just see if we can locate which work streams do you actually have to maintain, or do you have as an input giver? Well, first of all, you need to do support, right? You have end users, they need to use the system, you need to support them, right? So that is an input. You also have development. You have new requirements from the business, from the organization, you need to change. They are changing, so you need to change the application. So there is a development stream as well. Then there is a maintenance stream. There are adjacent systems in your portfolio that are changing. So you need to change that as well. You need to change interfaces. Perhaps you're moving from an on-premise server to a cloud server. So there will be maintenance work, pure maintenance, to make sure that your application is still coherent with the rest of the IT landscape in your company. And the last stream of tasks coming in are Microsoft. If you're bought into Microsoft Dynamics, you also bought into a plan where they are continuously pushing updates to you, building on the application, on the platform, giving you more options in Azure. You need to follow that and you need to apply to that as well. Because if you don't, your competitors will. Right, so those were the streams. So now let's look at what the knowledge areas you need and then try to address the intersection between the stream and the knowledge area. So we have 4 knowledge areas here. We have business, application, technical, and management. So if we take the first one, so we have the support stream. From a business angle, you need to understand what the users are actually using the application for, because if you don't understand what they're using it for, you cannot support them. So you need to have the same awareness in your support as your super users have. If you look at then the application domain, from the support stream, you need to be able to debug whether the issue coming in is actually an issue or not, figuring out whether it's a configuration or it's a customization and what it is that needs to be fixed. From a technical standpoint, you might dig into a more technical debugging where you need to go into a plugin and debug code, and you need to test the integration input. So you need technical experience as well. And then from a management point of view, you need service management skills. You need to know the difference between an incident and a problem and a service request. You need to know how these things handle and how you make sure that you're always working on the most critical things first. So there is definitely some management skills there as well. If we look at the development work stream, well, you need to, from a business point of view, you need to understand the new requirements coming in. We have seen many examples when we have talking to customers and prospects where they have said when they go to the IT department, they don't understand what they're doing. You naturally need not only to understand what the end users are doing, but you also need to push back, making sure that your end users are coming with their requirements and not necessarily with the solution to fix their requirements. You, as the IT organization, needs to come with that. And that requires that you not only need business awareness of what your end users are actually doing, but you also need application knowledge to figure out what can the application actually provide out of the box, standard, and where do you need to customize it to fit even more. And then you need software skills in the technical area. You need to be able to develop stuff. You need to write code, build a plugin, build an interface to an adjacent system, something like that. And in the management part, you need project delivery management services. You need to be able to figure out and manage how requirements can come in, the whole normal development cycle from analysis to design to implementation to test to deployment. From a management point of view, if we look at that maintenance point of view in the work streams, you need to assess the business impact when you are getting in a requirement from an adjacent system, changing its interface. Okay, what are we actually talking about here? What will be the business impact if we do this? You also need application, again, to identify and solve what implications this change in your IT landscape might have, and the technical awareness to actually implement the stuff that you need to do to be sure that your application is still running. And again, from a management point of view, there will be a whole lot more roadmap planning and stakeholder management in your internal maintenance stream. The last stream of work is Microsoft. From a business perspective, you need to identify the business opportunity. So Microsoft is pushing out a new update, and it has loads of things in it that can enhance the end user's experience using the application. You need to be able to dissect, you need to be able to filter what will actually be a good business for us, and not necessarily only looking at the current scope of your application, but perhaps also look at adjacent scopes. Could we actually expand the use of our dynamic system to something else? Should we use it in customer service and not only in sales, for instance, if we're talking about customer engagement? From the application knowledge, you need to solve the functional impact that such a release might have. And the same thing for the technical part. You might be able to rewrite some of your customizations to be able to fit into the new world. And from a management point of view, you need to be able to write a business case and move it upwards, saying, hey, there is a new update from Microsoft. We actually believe we can achieve this if we apply it and apply it this way. We can perhaps remove some of our customizations if we change some of our business processes, and that would be a good business case. So you need, as an IT department, you need to go to the top management and say, I think we can change your business. And that is where that you come from being a cost driver to being a value generator for your business. So address the width of the competences we need. Let's look at the depth of the competences. I claim that you need experience and seniority in an application management team. And let me try and explain that by using the analogy of an auto mechanic. Which scenario do you think requires the most experience? To build a car from scratch with using schematics and elaborated plans? Or to figure out why there is a rattling noise when you shift your gears from the 5th to the 6th on a car that you haven't built? I claim that the latter scenario requires the most experience. Let's take it one step further. would you take your car to a new mechanic every time it needs to be fixed? Or would you take it to your same mechanic every time because you believe that the knowledge that he built the last time is reusable for the next time? Again, you will most likely take it to the same mechanic unless he didn't fix your car in the first place. So I'm trying to explain that you need the experience to fix a car while it is running, because that is where the real business impact is. You also need experience in the implementation project, but the business impact of being a few days late might not be as grand as having a service breakdown while your car is running. Unfortunately, many companies do the exact opposite. They use their support department as an incubator for new talent. You can sit in our support department for the first 2 years of your career, and then you can move up to the projects department. I believe this is completely wrong, and especially concerning some of the aspects about application management services that I addressed earlier about the more and more important it becomes. But you also need to consider another aspect of your competences, because you need to continuously evolve them. As I addressed earlier, we have moved away from the era where we are having a server 100% isolated in our basement. We're moving to the clouds. We are exposing ourselves to a lot of risk, but also to a lot of opportunities. You need to be able, as an IT department, to be able to absorb up that knowledge, because you need to maneuver in it, because it's the reality. So you need to build a strong, continuous development program for that the people inside your team is enhancing their skills constantly. So we established that you need a certain broadness in your team. And you also established that you need a certain depth in the competences in your team. But let's just make it one bit trickier. The workload in application management services is by definition unpredictable. So all these skills you need, the broadness and the depth, you need to scale them as well to an unpredictable workload. And that can be perhaps one of the most trickiest parts of staffing your AMS organization. Let me give you a few pointers on how you can at least try to incorporate a bit of scaling in your team. First of all, the more you do, the more predictable your workload becomes, right? So if you are 2 guys doing 10 tasks, if one task explodes, you are on the deep end already. But if you're 5 or 10 guys doing 30 tasks, that one task can explode and you can still accommodate things. So basically, try to elaborate your service catalog to fit as many things in it as possible, shared amongst as many resources as possible, because that gives you the flexibility that when one task explodes, that you actually have the capacity to manage it. I will have another webinar on how to create your service catalog. So if you're interested in how you expand, you should really check that out. But then, when you are expanding your service catalog, some of the tasks that you are supposed to be doing can actually be scheduled. Don't, because then you just removed all the flexibility you just gained. So don't, even though that you have tasks that you could schedule, I'll do this on Thursday. Don't commit to it on Thursday. Make sure it will be done, but instead of planning in exact deadlines, start planning in cycles. Figure out what should be the frequency of this task. All right. So we will plan about, we'll do this every month, we'll do this every week, we'll do this every day, we'll do this every hour, and then try to fit it into a schedule. And then there is a little bit of room. When you do it like that, there's a little bit of room. And it's not necessarily, normally, if there is a fixed task you need to do, for instance, management reporting, and you put it in your calendar and say, I'm going to do this on Thursday. I'm not sure your management is going to be that much angry that it's going to be done on Friday instead of Thursday, as long as you fix that major incident that happened in that production system. So try planning in cycles and make a schedule like that instead of planning in absolute dates. Then invest in proactive measures. Sounds easy, right? And naturally, if we could predict all the major incidents coming in, we would be able to avoid them. But there's a truth in that the more organizations I visit, the more scared I'm getting about how less proactive they are. They are really being reactive, saying, yeah, we're just waiting for something to break down and then we are ready to go fix it, instead of trying to see whether they can actually be proactive about it. And proactive is not only about monitoring, setting up a service or server monitoring, figuring out whether can I pull this server 10 times in an hour. It can also be that you, for instance, in ERP, that you have a script that connects all your processes to the store server 1 hour before the store opens. See if you can check things before they're being used, because that will not only create better business continuity, but you will actually also save a lot of time on the end user storm you'll receive when the incident has actually been created. Because one of the most time-consuming stuff about having a major incident is actually not solving the incident. It's actually managing the all other parts around it. That you are being stormed by end users, that you're having management in your face. And that takes much more time to manage than actually fixing the incident, most of the time at least. So try really to invest in proactive measures. And then also challenge the SLAs or the OLAs, depending on your organization, that the business comes and requests. They might come and request that we need 24/7 services. Okay, why do you need that? Or you need to be able to respond or fix change requests within 2 days. Okay, wouldn't make that much. What is the actual impact if it's 4 days instead of 2 days? So try to challenge, again, creating business cases on the actual needed SLAs. Because most of the times when we're out talking to prospects and we sort of address the cost of having this SLA that they are requiring or requesting, and then the SLA that we predict is going to be beneficial for them, are two very different things. Let's talk about how we get access to these skills. Well, I have here a slide where I have listed a bunch of elements here on the left, and then I have tried to mark in who owns the risk and the cost associated with it, depending on which engagement type that you are working with. For examples, if you are having an internal team, you have your own staff, you have your own employees, then you naturally own the cost and the risk of recruitment, HR, turnover, employee turnover, onboarding, daily management, and so on. If you go for staff augmentation, so you are calling a consultancy and say, I need 2 guys, and they are coming, meeting on your doorsteps, you naturally will not have the cost and risk of the recruitment and the HR, but you still own the cost and the risks of all the other aspects. If you go one step further and say you buy capacity somewhere, then you're getting a little bit more for your money. There is a risk, I've seen that a few times, where the customer and the supplier in these resources are not really coherent about who actually comes with the best practices and the work processes for this team to work effectively. If you go on the outer right and go for a managed service, so you go and find a vendor that supplies application management services full-fledged as a managed service, then you are getting all these inside your cost and you are being relieved from all the risks. So basically, I'm just trying to let you know that when you are trying to build a business case on where to acquire these skills, be sure to factor in the risk and the cost of these risks amongst these areas to balance your business case better. There's just one of these aspects that I want to dig a little bit deeper into, and that's the last one on the slide here, called outside-in inspiration. Basically, what it means is whether you want to learn your own lessons or you want to benefit from lessons learned from your competitors. Because if you tap into a managed service and you have an incident, there is a big chance that one of the other Microsoft Dynamics customers and implementation had the same incident. So the service team resolving your incident might benefit from the knowledge built on a team having the same incident on another customer. And those sort of benefits can both be proactive and reactive. So it might resolve in a faster resolution time on your incidents, so the reactive part. But it can also be on the advisory part, so on the proactive services, that perhaps your team will advise you not to do the upgrade right now on Microsoft to the newest update because there is another application that actually had some issues with updating to the newest ones. So they want you to postpone the update a little bit. So those are proactive benefits that you can get as well. There is also an aspect of benchmarking and comparison. And let me try to explain that as well. I had a customer or a prospect where they came to me and says, we are actually quite happy with the current service we have with our team. And I said, okay, let me just look at your data. And they sent me their data. And I could see that their resolution time was approximately 3 times as long as our normal standard across many of our customers. And it's not the fact that whether their resources are better or worse than our resources. That's not the point. The point is here that the application manager didn't know because he had nothing to compare it to. He didn't know that, yeah, but 7 hours per incident sounds about right when we can deliver the same in about 3.5 hours. So the whole thing about having something to compare to be able to really assess the effectiveness and productivity of your AMS services. That's really, really valuable because you don't know what untapped potential you have there to save cost or to generate more value. So the whole thing about tapping into something standard, where you are then also tapping into a bigger experience pool, you're tapping into benchmarking across several implementations. That is really valuable. So to sum up, 5 important points that I've stressed during this webinar is the skill set, right? You need wide and you need deep skill sets. You need the experience and seniority in your team. You need to have a vast service catalog because the more you do, the more likely to have a steady workload you have and plan in cycles. And then you need to consider the cost and risk associated with what kind of engagement type you choose to staff your team. So in AlfaPeople, we are naturally offering application management services on Microsoft Dynamics applications. That means that we have economy of scale. We can actually invest in both the broad and the deep skill set in our teams. We can also invest in having AMS as a career path, meaning that we can continuously develop the skills in our AMS teams, which also means that we have a low employee turnover and an average experience and seniority of about 9 years in our department. In terms of scaling, we always plan for 20% overcapacity compared to what we normally see of the workload, meaning that we can always apply to a scaling workload. It also means that we can actually shift. We have dedicated employees for some customers, and then we have floating employees that can cater to multiple customers, and that's how we do it. In terms of engagement model, our AlfaPeople AMS services are offered as a managed service, meaning that everything is included. It also means that we are going pretty far on using our processes, our tools, our templates towards our customers, because then we have the benchmark across the customers. We can actually compare performances across our customers and figure out and have a dialogue with our customers saying, we can see that we are actually a longer resolution time on your incidents compared to our other customers. Maybe we should dig into that. Perhaps your first level support needs to do a further clarification before sending it to second level. We can actually work on the continuously development because we have something to compare our performance with. That's all I had for today. These were my pointers on how you staff an AMS organization. My name is Carsten Krag. Thank you for listening.